My name is James Tate, and until 3 months ago, I thought I had the perfect life. Not perfect like a magazine cover, perfect like a well-oiled machine, predictable, reliable, boring as hell, but mine. I'm 39, co-owner of Tate Electrical Contracting, a business my grandfather started with nothing but a toolbox and a willingness to crawl through other people's crawl spaces. My wife Beth and I lived, in a 4-bedroom colonial in Maple Heights, the kind of neighborhood where people wave from their driveways and complain about property taxes at block parties. Our daughters, Beau and Bree, are 15 and 13 respectively, both athletes, both smarter than their old man, both completely unaware that their parents' marriage had been running on fumes for longer than I cared to admit. The first crack appeared on a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays are when Beth hosts her book club, which means I get banished to the garage with a beer and whatever game happens to be on ESPN. I'd just settled into my lawn chair when I heard laughter from the kitchen, the kind of laughter that stops when someone walks into the room. "James is such a sweetheart," I heard Mary Henderson say. Mary's been Beth's best friend since college, the kind of woman who compliments your haircut while mentally redesigning your entire life. But honestly, Beth, don't you ever wonder what it would be like to be with someone more dynamic? I should have walked away, should have cranked up the radio and pretended I hadn't heard. Instead, I pressed my ear to the door like some suburban spy. "You mean like John?" That was Beth's voice, soft and conspiratorial. John, my brother, the golden child who could sell ice to Eskimos and charm the paint off a barn. John, who'd never married, never settled down, never had to worry about mortgage payments or parent-teacher conferences, or why the garbage disposal sounds like it's digesting a small animal. "I'm just saying," Mary continued, "some women get the steady provider, others get the exciting one. It's rare to find both in the same package." Beth's laugh was different this time, wistful. John's always been the real man in the family. I stood there in my garage, surrounded by power tools and half-finished projects, feeling like I'd been sucker-punched by my own life. Apparently, sharing a bed for 17 years means you're invisible. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. The signs had been there for months, of course. The late-night phone calls she'd take in the other room. "It's just Mary, honey. Girl talk." The way she'd started dressing up for grocery runs. The sudden interest in yoga classes that seemed to require an awful lot of post-workout coffee dates. I'd chalked it up to midlife restlessness. Beth was 37, still beautiful in that carefully maintained suburban way, highlighted hair, gym membership, skincare routine that cost more than my truck payment. Maybe she just needed to feel attractive again. Maybe I'd been taking her for granted. So I tried harder, brought her flowers, planned date nights, complimented her new outfits. She accepted it all with the enthusiasm of someone receiving a participation trophy. The breaking point came 3 weeks later. I was working late at the office, going over invoices with my business partner, Carl Robertson. Carl's the kind of guy who can find humor in a tax audit and somehow makes even the most stressful situations bearable. "You look like someone stole your lunch money," Carl said, glancing up from his calculator. "Beth giving you grief about working late again?" "Something like that." I rubbed my eyes. The numbers were starting to blur together. "Can I ask you something? How do you know when your marriage is in trouble?" Carl set down his pencil. "Well, when my ex-wife started referring to me as my first husband in casual conversation, that was a pretty big clue. Why?" Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. Text from Beth. "Working late again? John stopped by to help with the kitchen sink. Such a lifesaver. Don't wait up." XOXO. John. Of course it was John. My brother, the knight in shining armor, riding to the rescue with his toolbox and his charm and his complete inability to keep his hands off other people's lives. I showed Carl the text. He whistled low. Brother helping with home repairs while husband works late. That's either very sweet or very stupid. Which one am I? Jury's still out. I drove home through empty streets, my mind racing. The house was dark except for the kitchen light. Beth's car was in the driveway. So was John's truck. I found them in the kitchen. The sink was fine. No tools, no parts, no evidence of any repair work. They were sitting at the breakfast bar, sharing a bottle of wine, laughing at something on Beth's phone. They looked up when I walked in, and for just a moment I saw it. Guilt, surprise, the unmistakable look of two people who'd been caught. James! Beth's voice was too bright, too cheerful. You're home early. It's midnight, I said. This is actually late. John stood up, all 6'2" of him, flashing that $1 million smile that had gotten him out of trouble since we were kids. Hey, little brother. Just helping Beth with that sink problem. Tricky business, plumbing. I looked at the sink. Bone dry. No wrench marks, no pipe compound, no sign that anyone had so much as touched the faucet. Looks like you really worked up a sweat there. Oh, you know, John, Beth said, refilling her wine glass. He's so efficient. Fixed it in no time. I nodded slowly. Right. Well, I'm beat. Long day at the office, keeping the lights on and all that boring stuff. John, don't let me keep you. I'm sure you have somewhere important to be. John's smile faltered slightly. Actually, I was just leaving. Beth, thanks for the wine and the conversation. After he left, Beth and I cleaned up in silence. She hummed while she rinsed the wine glasses, the same tune she used to hum when we were first married and everything was new and full of possibility. Good book club tonight? I asked. She looked confused for a moment. Book club? Tuesday night. Book club. The reason I've been banished to the garage every week for the past 6 months. Oh, right. Yes, very good. We're reading, it's a romance novel. You wouldn't be interested. I watched her face in the reflection of the kitchen window. Even after 17 years, she was still a terrible liar. That night, lying in bed listening to her breathe, I made a decision. No more playing detective. No more second-guessing every conversation or analyzing every text message. If Beth wanted out of our marriage, she was going to have to be honest about it. I just had no idea how devastating that honesty would be. The next morning, I was getting ready for work when I noticed Beth's purse on the dresser, open, with papers spilling out. I wasn't snooping. At least, that's what I told myself. I was just being helpful, tidying up. That's when I saw the note. Handwritten in John's distinctive scrawl, Riverside Condos, Unit 47, Saturday, 2 p.m. Can't wait to show you our new beginning. I stood there holding the note, feeling the last piece of my perfect life crumble in my hands. Our new beginning. Not her new beginning. Our new beginning. I always knew John had terrible handwriting. I just never thought he'd use it to stab me in the back. The call came at 10:30 on a Thursday morning. I was in the middle of reviewing a bid for the new shopping center project when Beth's number flashed on my phone. She never called during work hours, said she didn't want to bother me with domestic stuff while I was being all businessy. James, you need to come home, now. Her voice was different, flat, businesslike. The voice she used when talking to telemarketers or scheduling dentist appointments. What's wrong? Are the girls okay? The girls are fine. Just come home, please. The please was what scared me. Beth hadn't said please to me in months. I told Carl I had a family emergency and drove home through midday traffic, my mind conjuring every possible disaster. House fire, burglary, medical emergency, death in the family. Never once did I imagine what I actually found. Moving trucks, 2 of them, parked in my driveway like giant mechanical vultures. Men in coveralls were carrying my furniture out of my house, loading it into the trucks with the casual efficiency of people who did this for a living. I sat in my car for a full minute, watching strangers dismantle my life. My leather recliner, the one I'd saved up for 3 months to buy, disappeared into the back of a truck. The dining room set Beth had picked out for our 10th anniversary followed. Box after box of our belongings, labeled in Beth's neat handwriting, kitchen, master bedroom, girls' rooms. Beth was standing on the front porch, clipboard in hand, directing traffic like a general commanding troops. She was wearing the blue dress I'd bought her for our last anniversary, the one she said made her feel beautiful. I wondered if that was intentional or just cosmic irony. I got out of the car and walked up the driveway. One of the movers, a guy built like a linebacker, nodded at me. "You the husband?" I was under that impression, yes. Beth looked up from her clipboard. She'd been crying. Her makeup was smudged, despite obvious attempts to fix it, but her jaw was set with determination. "We need to talk," she said. I figured. Unless this is some kind of surprise redecorating project. She didn't smile. Beth used to laugh at my jokes, even the bad ones, especially the bad ones. We went inside, or what was left of inside. The house looked like a crime scene, empty spaces marking where furniture used to be, picture hooks naked on the walls, indentations in the carpet where our life had once stood. "I'm leaving you, James." Just like that. No preamble, no gentle lead-in, no, "We need to talk about our relationship." Just a simple declarative sentence that hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. "Okay," I said. "Because what else do you say?" "Can I ask why?" She'd been practicing this speech. I could tell by the way she held herself, the way she'd positioned herself near the window so the light hit her face just right. Even during our divorce conversation, Beth was thinking about her angles. "I'm just not attracted to you anymore, James. You're a good man, a good father, but you're safe, predictable. You come home at the same time every day, watch the same shows, eat the same breakfast. I feel like I'm suffocating. So you're leaving me because I'm reliable? You're holding us all back. The girls need to see what real passion looks like, what it means to take risks, to live fully. With you, everything is just maintenance. Paying bills, mowing the lawn, fixing things that break. There's no adventure, no excitement." I looked around our empty living room. "And this is exciting? It's a start." The movers were still working, their voices echoing through the hollow rooms. I could hear them in the girls' bedrooms, packing up 15 and 13 years of childhood. "Where are Beau and Bree?" "They're safe. They're somewhere safe." The pause told me everything. "They're with John." Beth's carefully composed mask slipped for just a moment. "John's been very supportive during this difficult time." "I bet he has. How long?" "How long what?" "How long have you been sleeping with my brother?" She lifted her chin defiantly. "This isn't about John. This is about us, about what we've become, or what we haven't become." That's not an answer. 6 months, she said quietly. "But it's not what you think. It started as friendship, someone to talk to when you were always working late, always buried in spreadsheets and contracts. John listens to me. He sees me. 6 months. While I was working late to pay for her yoga classes and her book clubs and her girls' nights out, she was finding comfort in my brother's arms. While I was trying to be the steady provider, the reliable husband, she was falling in love with everything I wasn't. So what happens now? I've filed for divorce. You'll be served with papers next week. I'm asking for full custody of the girls, at least initially. You can have supervised visitation until we work out a more permanent arrangement. Supervised visitation. Like I was a danger to my own daughters. Like 17 years of marriage and 15 years of fatherhood could be erased with a legal filing. And where exactly are you taking my children? John has a place. It's temporary, just until I can get settled. John's bachelor pad. Perfect environment for 2 teenage girls. It's a beautiful condo. The girls will have their own rooms, their own space. John's already enrolled them in new schools, better schools. New schools. John had enrolled my daughters in new schools. My daughters, who I'd coached in softball and soccer, who came to me with math homework and boy problems, who still hugged me goodnight even though their friends said they were too old for that. You should have talked to me first. I tried, James. I've been trying for years, but you don't hear me. You hear what you want to hear, see what you want to see. You think everything is fine as long as the bills are paid and the house is maintained. But I'm dying inside this life. One of the movers appeared in the doorway. Ma'am, we're ready for the last load. You want us to take the boxes from the garage? Yes, everything except the tools. Those stay. How generous. She was leaving me my tools. After the trucks pulled away, I stood in my empty house, listening to the echo of my footsteps on bare floors. Beth had taken everything, furniture, dishes, pictures, even the plants. The only things left were my clothes, my tools, and a single folded piece of paper on the kitchen counter. It was a note from Beau. Dad, I'm sorry. Mom says this is better for everyone, but it doesn't feel better. I love you. Please don't hate us. I sat on the kitchen floor and cried for the first time since my father died. The next morning, I drove to the office early, hoping to lose myself in work. Carl was already there, coffee in hand, sorting through invoices. You look like hell, he said. Rough night? Beth left me, took the girls, took everything. She's been sleeping with John. Carl set down his coffee cup. Jesus, James, I'm sorry. She says I'm boring, predictable, says I'm holding everyone back. Your brother? Really? Really? Carl shook his head. That's low even for family. What are you going to do? Before I could answer, the office door opened and John walked in. He was wearing a suit, unusual for John, who typically dressed like he was perpetually on his way to a golf course. His hair was freshly cut, his shoes polished. He looked like a man who'd just won the lottery. Morning, gentlemen, he said, flashing that trademark smile. Beautiful day, isn't it? I stood up slowly. John. James, I was hoping we could talk. Clear the air, you know. This is all very awkward, but I think we can handle it like adults. Carl made a noise that sounded like a growl. I'll be in the back office. Holler if you need me to call an ambulance. After Carl left, John sat down in the chair across from my desk, making himself comfortable. He'd always been good at that, making himself comfortable in other people's spaces. Look, James, I know this is difficult. Difficult? I laughed, and it came out harsh and bitter. My wife leaves me for my brother, takes my kids, empties my house, and you think it's difficult? Beth's not happy, James. She hasn't been happy for years. You had to have seen that. So you decided to fix her happiness problem by sleeping with her. John's smile faltered slightly. It wasn't planned. It just happened. Sometimes people connect in ways they don't expect. 6 months, John. 6 months you've been screwing my wife and playing daddy to my daughters. Nothing just happens for 6 months. The girls love me, James. They're happy. Isn't that what matters? I stood up so fast, my chair rolled backward and hit the wall. They're not your daughters. They could be. I could give them things you never could. Opportunities, experiences, a different kind of life. You mean your life. The life where responsibility is optional and commitment is a dirty word. John stood up too, and suddenly the office felt very small. Maybe that's what they need. Maybe that's what Beth needs. Someone who isn't afraid to take risks, to live a little. And maybe what you need is to get the hell out of my office. Actually, John said, straightening his tie, I was hoping we could discuss the business. With everything that's happening, it might be awkward for us to continue as partners. I've been talking to some investors, people who might be interested in buying out your share. The room went very quiet. Outside, I could hear traffic, construction noise, the normal sounds of a world that was continuing to function, despite the fact that mine had just imploded. You want to buy me out? I think it would be best for everyone. Clean break, fresh start. You could take the money, start over somewhere new. Maybe find someone who appreciates the simple life you're so good at providing. That's when I hit him. I'm not a violent man. Never been in a fight. Never thrown a punch in anger. But something about John's smug smile, his casual dismissal of 17 years of marriage and 20 years of business partnership flipped a switch in my brain. My fist connected with his jaw with a satisfying crack. John stumbled backward, knocked over a chair, and ended up on the floor, blood trickling from his lip. "You son of a bitch," I said, standing over him. "You steal my wife, kidnap my children, and now you want my business too?" John wiped the blood from his mouth. His perfect composure finally cracked. "You're insane. This is assault. I could have you arrested." "Go ahead. Call the cops. Explain to them how you're the victim here." Carl appeared in the doorway, took in the scene. John on the floor, me standing over him with bloody knuckles, and nodded approvingly. "Everything okay in here?" he asked. "Just having a family discussion," I said. John got to his feet, straightening his suit. "This isn't over, James. You can't just hit people when they tell you things you don't want to hear." "You're right," I said. "Next time I'll use a baseball bat." After John left, Carl handed me a bag of ice for my hand. "Feel better?" "Actually, yes." "Good, because now the real fun starts. You know he's going to try to destroy you, right? Take the business, turn the girls against you, make sure you end up with nothing." I sat down at my desk, holding the ice against my knuckles. "Then I guess I better make sure that doesn't happen." "What are you thinking?" I looked around the office, at the family photos on the walls, the awards and certificates, 20 years of building something from nothing. John thought he could just waltz in and take it all. Beth thought she could erase our life together like it never happened. They were both wrong. "I'm thinking," I said, "that it's time to quit being so predictable." At night, I'd lie awake listening to the constant hum of the restaurant's exhaust fan below and the distant hiss of traffic outside. The walls were thin enough that I could hear the couple in the next apartment arguing about bills and forgiveness. Every word echoed like an unwanted reminder of my own failure. The ceiling paint peeled in lazy curls, and the air smelled faintly of sesame oil, no matter how many candles I lit. It wasn't much, but it was mine, or at least the part of me that was left after Beth's petition had taken a swing at everything else. I kept the divorce papers on the kitchen counter, spread out like an autopsy report. Every line was a little incision, every demand a small dissection of the life I thought I'd built. The house we'd picked together, the one with the creaky porch and the oak tree out front where we'd carved our initials. That was hers now, if her lawyer got his way. The business I'd poured 10 years into, the one that had finally started turning a profit after years of sleepless nights. That too. And somehow she wanted me to fund her new life on top of it. The irony wasn't lost on me. The woman who'd accused me of prioritizing money over love was now trying to bankrupt me in the name of emotional justice. Lucy called me the next morning. "You're going to need witnesses," she said, skipping any preamble. "People who can speak to your involvement as a father, teachers, coaches, family, friends, anyone who's seen you with the girls." "Beth's been parading John around like he's their new dad," I said. "They go to the same church now. He's probably shaking hands with the pastor, telling him what a hero he is for helping her heal." Lucy sighed in that long, suffering way only veteran attorneys can. "People like John always overplay their hand. Keep your head down. Document everything. Courts love stability. They hate drama." "Drama's all I've got left," I muttered. Still, I followed her advice. I became an archivist of my own life, printing emails from teachers, screenshots of video calls with the girls before Beth had cut me off, receipts from every grocery run where I'd bought their favorite cereal. I even took photos of the studio, making sure the place looked clean, lived in, and safe. Lucy said perception mattered more than perfection. By Friday, I'd started noticing patterns in Beth's communication, or lack thereof. Every time I tried to reach Beau and Bree, the call would ring twice before disconnecting. No voicemail option. When I texted, I'd get a single check mark instead of two. It wasn't just silence, it was deliberate isolation. That night, after finishing a cheap dinner from downstairs, fried rice and loneliness, I scrolled through Beth's social media. Her account was private, but her friends weren't. One of them, a woman named Tessa, had tagged her in a photo at a family barbecue. There they were, Beth, the girls, and John, all smiles. My daughters in matching dresses, John at the grill, Beth leaning into him like she hadn't spent 15 years leaning on me. The caption read, "So happy to see this beautiful family healing together." My throat tightened. I zoomed in on the image until the pixels blurred. The girls looked genuinely happy. Or maybe they were just pretending for the camera the way kids learn to. Either way, John looked like he'd won. I sent the photo to Lucy with a short message. Evidence of manipulation? Her reply came a few minutes later. Maybe. Don't use it yet. Wait until they slip up publicly, then it's leverage. I didn't want leverage. I wanted my daughters to pick up the phone. The next morning, I drove by the old neighborhood. I told myself it was just to clear my head, but I knew better. The house looked smaller than I remembered, like grief had shrunken it. John's truck was in the driveway, parked in the spot where I used to leave mine. The front curtains were open, and through the window, I could see movement. Beth setting the table, the girls helping, and John pouring orange juice like he belonged there. I didn't stop. I didn't knock. I just sat there for a minute, engine running, before driving off. Back at the studio, I found a message from Lucy waiting in my inbox. Court date confirmed. Preliminary custody hearing in 3 weeks. 3 weeks to prepare. 3 weeks to prove that love could be documented, that a father's presence could be reduced to a series of exhibits and affidavits. I made coffee in the chipped mug the last tenant had left behind, one that read, "Today is a new beginning." I stared at it, half amused, half resentful. Then I sat down at my desk, opened a new spreadsheet, and began typing, Exhibit A, proof of parental involvement. Underneath, I listed everything, photos, dates, receipts, testimonies. Somewhere below that, I added a note Lucy would never see. Exhibit B, the things I can't prove. The bedtime stories. The scraped knees and school projects. The laughter that used to fill the house before it became an echo chamber for betrayal. The apartment smelled like lo mein and burnt hope, but I kept working long past midnight. Because when you lose everything, the only thing left to build is the record of who you used to be. Mom's dining room hadn't changed since the Reagan administration. Same mahogany table polished to a mirror shine. Same lace curtains filtering the late afternoon light. Same smell of roasted chicken and rosemary that somehow made the air itself feel older, heavier. The only thing new was the tension. It hung between us like static, making every clink of silverware sound louder than it should have. Connie poured herself a glass of wine and sat across from me. "You look like hell, James." "Thanks, I've been working on it." She smirked, but her eyes were worried. "You know, you could have called me before it got this bad. I didn't want to drag you into it." "Too late for that," Mom said, emerging from the kitchen with a serving platter the size of a car hood. "When one of my children decides to blow up his marriage and his brother's dignity in one go, it's family business." "I didn't blow up anything," I said. "They did that all on their own." Mom set the platter down with more force than necessary, then sat at the head of the table. Sit, eat, talk. We filled our plates in silence for a few minutes, the ritual comfort of Sunday dinner temporarily masking the chaos outside those walls. The chicken was perfect, the mashed potatoes buttery and smooth, but I barely tasted anything. My appetite had been a casualty of the last few months. "So," Mom began, cutting straight to the marrow, "what's your plan?" I looked up. "Plan?" "Yes, plan. You're a strategist by nature, always have been. You think I don't know you've been collecting evidence, building timelines, talking to lawyers? You're your father's son. You don't sit still while someone steals your life. She's right, Connie said. You can't just wallow in resentment. It'll eat you alive. You need to figure out what you want and how to get it. I already told you what I want, I said. My daughter's back, my name cleared, and maybe, just maybe, for Beth and John to finally face the mess they made. Mom nodded slowly. Good. But you'll need to be smarter than them. Ruthless, even. If Beth's painting you as unstable, don't give her the satisfaction. Let her trip over her own lies. As for John, well, men like your brother always overestimate their charm and underestimate their paper trail. I frowned. What do you mean? Connie leaned in. Mom's been digging. I blinked. Digging? Mom took a sip of her wine and gave me a look that reminded me she'd once managed a staff of 40 and scared every single one of them. Your brother's construction business has been circling the drain for years. He's been borrowing money from questionable sources to keep it afloat, and lately, he's been moving funds from your joint family trust account into his own company account. My fork froze halfway to my mouth. What? Connie found the transfers, Mom said calmly. Small amounts, spaced out, hidden under expense categories that wouldn't raise suspicion, but they add up. Tens of thousands. Jesus, John, I muttered. He's desperate, Connie said, and stupid. The perfect combination. Mom reached across the table and placed her hand over mine. You can use this, James. If Beth and John want a war, fine. But you don't fight it with emotion. You fight it with precision, facts, paper, and patience. Let them hang themselves with their own rope. The old fire in her eyes, the one I'd seen when she negotiated supplier contracts or outmaneuvered Dad's competitors, was back. It made her look 20 years younger. I don't want to destroy them, I said quietly. I just want to be free of them. Then you have to win first, Mom said simply. After dinner, Connie walked me to my car. The night was cool and still, cicadas buzzing in the distance. She's serious, you know, Connie said. If you give her the go-ahead, she'll turn this into a campaign. I leaned against the car door. Maybe that's what it takes. You sure you want to go down that road? Mom doesn't fight halfway, and once you start digging into John's finances, there's no coming back from that. I looked up at the old house, its porch light glowing like a lighthouse in the dark. He stole my wife, my daughters, my reputation. I'm not the one who started this. But I'm damn sure going to finish it. Connie sighed. Then at least be careful. Don't let this consume you. It already has, I said, and I meant it. When I got back to the apartment, the smell of soy sauce hit me like a wall. I sat down at my desk, opened my laptop, and started a new folder labeled John Evidence, bank transfers, business filings, emails from mutual contacts. I began pulling everything together, just as I'd done for work projects 100 times before. Only this time the stakes were personal. By midnight I had a growing spreadsheet and a sense of grim clarity. They'd built their happiness on a lie, and I was going to make sure the world saw every crack in its foundation. Mom was right. I didn't need rage anymore. I needed strategy. And in that quiet, grease-scented apartment above the Chinese restaurant, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Purpose. That night, I sat at my desk in the dim glow of my laptop, scrolling through Beth's social media like an archaeologist sifting through the ruins of a fallen civilization. Her feed was a timeline of curated happiness, filtered smiles, vacation sunsets, inspirational quotes about new beginnings. But beneath the gloss, I started to see patterns, timestamps, locations, people tagged. There it was, a photo from 2 weeks ago, supposedly taken at a school fundraiser. The girls were nowhere in sight. Instead, Beth and John were in matching white outfits at what looked suspiciously like a wine tasting event. Another post claimed she was helping the girls with homework, but the metadata told a different story. The photo had been uploaded from a hotel Wi-Fi network in another city. Old habits die hard. Beth loved to show off the details of her life without realizing how much she revealed. I downloaded everything, every photo, caption, and tagged location for Lucy to review. With enough cross-referencing, we could prove that Beth and John had lied about nearly everything: the girls' schooling, their finances, even their supposed fresh start. By midnight, I had a digital map of deceit. Dozens of inconsistencies, timelines that didn't match, gaps that could swallow her narrative whole. She'd turned her private life into public evidence, and she didn't even know it. Tuesday morning, I called Lucy. "How solid is the morality clause?" I asked. "Solid enough if we can prove misconduct that damages the company's image," she said. "What have you got?" "Social media goldmine, public posts, timestamps, proof that John's been using company funds for personal expenses, and maybe, just maybe, confirmation that he's been traveling with my wife while claiming business trips." Lucy whistled softly. "That's more than enough for a preliminary motion. We can initiate an internal audit and freeze his partner privileges until the board reviews his conduct." I leaned back in my chair, feeling the first genuine sense of control I'd had in months. "Do it." "Understood," she said. "But James, once we start this, it's not just business anymore. It's war." "I know," I said quietly, "and I'm done losing." By the afternoon, Lucy had filed the motion. My banker confirmed that the company account was secure, and my accountant began preparing the audit request. Carl popped into my office mid-afternoon, coffee in hand. "So, is this the brilliant part, or the insane part?" "Depends on your perspective," I said. "If it works, it's brilliant. If it doesn't, I'll be out of a business partner, a wife, and a reputation." Carl grinned. "Then let's make sure it works." That night, back in my studio apartment, I ordered takeout and opened my email. Lucy had sent me a summary of John's financial irregularities. Reading through it was like watching a slow-motion car crash. Misused company credit cards, falsified invoices, travel expenses that corresponded perfectly with Beth's vacation posts. He hadn't just betrayed me personally. He'd jeopardized the entire company for his ego. I stared at the report for a long time before closing the laptop. The truth didn't make me feel vindicated. It just made me tired. Tired of the lies, the games, the endless spiral of deceit. But exhaustion wasn't an excuse anymore. Ruth had been right. John and Beth had chosen this path, and it was time for them to feel the ground give way beneath them. Before bed, I sent one last message to Lucy. "File the notice. Proceed with the audit. Let's bring this into the light." Her reply came 5 minutes later. "Done. Expect fallout by morning." I turned off the light and lay in the dark, the hum of the restaurant's exhaust fan drifting up through the floorboards. For the first time since the divorce papers arrived, I didn't feel like prey. I felt like the one holding the map and the match. I created a fake social media profile, not to stalk or harass, but to see what Beth was sharing publicly. What I found was a goldmine of evidence. Photos of her and John at restaurants, tagged with romantic hashtags, check-ins at his condo, pictures of my daughters in their new temporary home, looking confused and unhappy. Most damning of all, a post from 2 months ago, while we were still married, showing Beth and John at a weekend getaway with the caption, "Sometimes the best things happen when you least expect them." 2 months ago. Which meant the affair had been going on longer than Beth had admitted. I screenshot everything, compiled it into a folder, and sent it to Lucy with a note. "Evidence of adultery and fraud. How's this for our case?" Her response came back within an hour. "This changes everything. Can you meet tomorrow morning?" But I wasn't done. If John wanted to play hardball, I was going to show him what hardball really looked like. I spent the rest of the week quietly liquidating joint assets, emptying savings accounts that had both our names on them, canceling credit cards, transferring investments into accounts that only I controlled. Everything I did was legal. The accounts were joint, the assets were community property, and I had every right to protect my financial interests during a divorce proceeding. By Friday, Beth and John were cash-strapped and scrambling. The first sign that my plan was working came Saturday morning when Beth called screaming about frozen credit cards and empty bank accounts. "You can't do this," she shouted into the phone. "I have expenses. The girls need things." "Then maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to destroy our marriage," I said calmly. "Don't worry. There's money set aside for the girls' needs, but your shopping sprees and romantic dinners are going to have to wait. This is financial abuse. This is financial reality. You want a divorce? You want to take everything I've worked for? You want to paint me as the villain? Fine. But you're going to do it without my money funding your new lifestyle." I hung up and immediately called Lucy to report the conversation. Everything was being documented now. Every phone call, every text, every interaction was going into the legal record. That afternoon, I got a call from an unknown number. "Mr. Tate, this is Detective Rodriguez with the County Sheriff's Department. We've received a complaint about harassment and financial misconduct. Would you be available to come in for a conversation?" My heart sank. John and Beth were trying to get me arrested. "Of course, Detective. When would be convenient?" "How about now?" The sheriff's department was a modern building that smelled of disinfectant and desperation. Detective Rodriguez was a middle-aged Hispanic woman with kind eyes and the patient demeanor of someone who'd heard every sob story in the book. "Mr. Tate, I want to be clear that you're not under arrest or being charged with anything, but we've received some serious allegations, and I need to ask you a few questions." She led me to an interview room and offered me coffee, which I declined. My hands were already shaking enough. "Your wife and her companion have filed a complaint alleging financial abuse, harassment, and threatening behavior. They claim you've frozen their access to funds, made threatening phone calls, and physically assaulted Mr. John Tate. Can you help me understand your side of this?" I pulled out my phone and showed her the folder of evidence I'd compiled. "Detective, 3 weeks ago I discovered that my wife was having an affair with my brother. She moved out, took my children, and filed for divorce. Everything I've done since then has been legal and documented. I'm protecting my assets during a divorce proceeding, which is not only legal, but recommended by every divorce attorney in the country." Rodriguez looked through the photos, read the social media posts, and examined the timeline I'd created. "This is very thorough. I'm a detail-oriented person. It served me well in business. What about the physical altercation with your brother?" "I punched him once, in my own office, after he propositioned me to sell him my share of our family business so he could fund his affair with my wife. It was wrong, and I regret it, but I think most people would understand the provocation." Rodriguez nodded. "Mr. Tate, I'm going to be honest with you. This complaint feels like harassment of the legal system. Your wife and brother-in-law are trying to use us to fight their divorce battle, and that's not what we're here for. So I'm free to go?" "You're free to go, but Mr. Tate, be careful. Divorce makes people do crazy things. Don't give them any ammunition they can use against you." I drove home feeling lighter than I had in weeks. John and Beth had overplayed their hand, and it was starting to backfire. But I wasn't done yet. Not even close. That night, I sat in my studio apartment, eating Chinese takeout and planning my next move. I'd stopped the financial bleeding, gathered evidence of their affair, and called their bluff on the harassment complaint. Now, it was time to go on the offensive. I opened my laptop and started typing an email to every contractor, supplier, and business contact in my phone. The subject line read, "Important business update, Tate Electrical Contracting." The message was simple and professional. "Dear friends and colleagues, Due to recent personal developments, I want to clarify the management structure at Tate Electrical Contracting. Effective immediately, all business decisions and financial commitments must be approved by myself or my sister, Connie Tate. My brother John Tate is no longer authorized to make commitments on behalf of the company. Thank you for your continued support during this transition. Best regards, James Tate. I hit send and leaned back in my chair. By Monday morning, every business contact in the city would know that John had been effectively neutered. No more credit, no more handshake deals, no more trading on the family name. My phone rang almost immediately. It was Connie. "I just saw your email," she said. "Mom's going to love this." "Think it'll work?" "I think John's about to learn what it feels like to be cut off from the family money tree." "And James?" "Yeah? It's about time." I went to bed that night with something I hadn't felt in weeks: hope. Beth and John thought they'd destroyed my life, taken everything that mattered to me. They were about to learn that the quiet, predictable husband and brother they'd dismissed was capable of fighting back. And I was just getting started. Monday morning brought the first sign that my email had hit its target. Carl was waiting in the parking lot when I arrived at the office, grinning like a kid on Christmas morning. "Your phone's been ringing off the hook," he said. "Half the contractors in the city want to confirm that John's been cut off, and the other half want to tell you stories about deals he tried to make using company credit." "Stories? Oh, you're going to love this. Apparently, your brother's been promising people payment from Tate Electrical for months. Equipment rentals, material orders, even payroll for subcontractors. He's been using our reputation to fund his failing business." I unlocked the office door, my mind already racing. "How much are we talking about?" "Rough estimate? About $120,000 in unauthorized commitments, all in the company name, all with John's signature. $120,000. John hadn't just been having an affair with my wife. He'd been embezzling from the family business to pay for it. The phone rang before I could fully process this information. Carl answered with his usual cheerful professionalism. "Tate Electrical, this is Carl. Oh, hi, Mrs. Henderson. Yes, he's here. I'll put you right through." He handed me the phone with a warning look. "Beth's friend Mary. She sounds upset." Mary Henderson's voice was tight with barely controlled panic. "James, I need to talk to you about Beth. Something's wrong." "Define wrong." "She called me at 6 this morning crying, asking if she could borrow money. She says you've frozen all her accounts, left her with nothing. She's got those poor girls living in some awful place. No food in the refrigerator, no money for basic necessities." I sat down heavily. "Mary, Beth left me 3 weeks ago. She emptied our house, took our daughters, and filed for divorce asking for everything I own. The accounts I froze were joint accounts that I legally transferred to protect assets during divorce proceedings. There's a separate account set up specifically for the girls' needs: school supplies, clothes, activities, medical expenses. Beth has the account information." "She does?" "She does. What she doesn't have access to is the money she was using to fund her affair with my brother." Silence on the other end of the line. Then, "James, I had no idea. Beth told us you'd become controlling, that you were trying to punish her financially." "Beth's told a lot of people a lot of things. Most of them aren't true." After Mary hung up, I called Lucy to report the conversation. The pattern was becoming clear. Beth was trying to turn our social circle against me by playing the victim, but her story was falling apart under scrutiny. The next call came from my daughter's school. "Mr. Tate, this is Principal Williams at Jefferson Middle School. We've been trying to reach you about Bree's absences. She's missed 8 days this month, and we haven't received any excuse notes." My blood ran cold. 8 days? "Yes, sir. We've called the emergency contact numbers, but they've been disconnected. Is everything all right at home?" I explained the situation as diplomatically as possible. Separation, temporary custody arrangement, communication breakdown. Principal Williams was understanding but firm. "Mr. Tate, I'm required to report excessive absences to the county. If we don't see Bree in school by the end of the week, I'll have to file a truancy report." After I hung up, I sat staring at the phone. My daughters weren't in new schools. They weren't in any schools. Beth had pulled them out of their lives, away from their friends and teachers and normal routines, and was keeping them isolated in John's failing world. That's when I decided it was time to pay them a visit. John's condo was in Riverside Commons, a development that had been built during the housing boom and never quite recovered from the bust. Half the units were empty, and the ones that were occupied had the temporary feel of people who were between better places. I parked across the street and watched the building for an hour. At 2:30, Beth emerged with a bag of laundry, looking harried and tired. She'd lost weight, and not in a good way. Her hair, usually perfectly styled, was pulled back in a messy ponytail. She looked like someone who was barely keeping it together. 20 minutes later, she returned with the laundry and groceries, discount brands from the cheap supermarket across town. The woman who used to shop exclusively at the upscale market was now clipping coupons and buying generic cereal. At 4, I saw my daughters. Beau and Bree came out of the building together, walking toward the bus stop. They were wearing clothes I didn't recognize, thrift store finds, by the look of them. Bree's backpack was held together with duct tape. They looked smaller somehow, diminished. I wanted to run to them, to scoop them up, and take them home. Instead, I took pictures. Evidence for the custody hearing. That evening, I called an emergency meeting with Mom and Connie. We met at Mom's house in the kitchen where we'd solved family problems for decades. "John's broke," I said without preamble. "He's been using company credit to fund his lifestyle, and now he's got Beth and the girls living in poverty while he tries to figure out his next move." Mom's face was stone. "How broke?" $120,000 in unauthorized debt, plus whatever he owes on his own business. The condo's a rental, and he's behind on that too. Connie pulled out a folder. I did more digging. John's company has 3 lawsuits pending, all for non-payment of subcontractors. His business license is under review, and the IRS has filed a lien against his assets. "So he's desperate," Mom said. "Desperate enough to destroy his brother's marriage and steal his business," I replied. Mom was quiet for a long moment, the way she got when she was making important decisions. Finally, she looked up at me and Connie. "It's time to call a board meeting." Tate Electrical Contracting was technically a corporation, with shares divided among family members. Mom held 40%, I held 30%, John held 20%, and Connie held 10%. In 30 years, we'd never needed to call a formal board meeting. Decisions were made around kitchen tables and over Sunday dinners. But desperate times called for formal measures. The meeting was scheduled for Friday morning at the office. I sent John a certified letter with the details, copying our corporate attorney and accountant. Everything was going to be by the book. John arrived 10 minutes late, looking like he hadn't slept in days. His usual confidence was cracked around the edges, replaced by the manic energy of someone who knew he was in trouble. "This is ridiculous," he said, taking his seat at the conference table. "We're family. We don't need lawyers and formal meetings." "We're also business partners," Mom said calmly. "And business partners have fiduciary responsibilities to each other." Our attorney, David Kim, opened his briefcase and pulled out a stack of documents. "Mr. John Tate, you're being accused of breach of fiduciary duty, unauthorized use of corporate credit, and violation of your partnership agreement. The board is prepared to offer you 2 options. John's face went white. "What kind of options?" "Option 1. You resign from the company immediately, forfeit your partnership share to cover unauthorized debts, and sign a non-compete agreement. In exchange, the company will not pursue criminal charges for embezzlement." "And option 2? "Option 2. We file criminal charges, pursue civil remedies, and let the courts sort it out. Given the evidence, you'd likely face felony charges and personal bankruptcy." John looked around the table. At Mom's stern face, Connie's disappointed expression, my calm resolve. This is about Beth, isn't it? You're punishing me because of Beth. This is about $120,000 in unauthorized debt, I said. Beth is just the reason you needed the money. I can pay it back. Give me 6 months, I can… With what? Connie interrupted. Your business is failing. You're facing lawsuits. You can't even make rent on that condo. John was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was smaller, defeated. What happens to Beth and the girls? That's not the company's problem, Mom said. That's your problem. The vote was unanimous. John signed the papers with shaking hands, officially ending his association with the family business. As he gathered his things, he looked at me with something that might have been regret. I never meant for it to go this far, he said. Yes, you did, I replied. You just thought you wouldn't get caught. After John left, I sat in the conference room with Mom and Connie, feeling strangely empty. I'd won. John was out of the business. His financial house of cards had collapsed, and Beth was about to discover that her new life was built on quicksand. But I still didn't have my daughters back. That afternoon, I got a call from Beth. She was crying so hard I could barely understand her. James, please, we need to talk. John, things aren't what I thought they were. The girls are asking for you. They want to come home. Where are you? The condo. But we might not be here much longer. John says we have to move, find somewhere cheaper. I looked at my watch. 4:30 p.m. Rush hour traffic, but I could be there in 30 minutes. I'll be right there. The Riverside Commons looked even more depressing in the late afternoon light. Half the parking spaces were empty, and the landscaping had the neglected look of a place that was slowly dying. I found Beth sitting on the steps outside the building, looking lost. When she saw me, she started crying again. I'm sorry, she said. I'm so sorry, James. I thought he could give us something better. But he lied about everything. The money, the opportunities, even the condo. We're getting evicted next week. I sat down beside her, maintaining careful distance. Where are the girls? Upstairs, packing. They don't have much. We had to sell most of their things to buy groceries. And John? Gone. Left this morning with whatever cash he could scrape together. Said he had to handle some business, but I think he just ran. Left us with nothing. I looked at this woman I'd been married to for 17 years, sitting on the steps of a failing condo complex, abandoned by the man she'd left me for. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I just felt tired. Beth, I need you to listen to me very carefully. I'm going to help you, but not because I forgive you, and not because I want to reconcile. I'm going to help you because my daughters need stability, and because despite everything you've done, you're still their mother. She nodded, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. Here's what's going to happen. You and the girls are going to move into the guest house behind Mom's place. It's small, but it's clean and safe. The girls will go back to their regular schools. You'll get a job, a real job, not some fantasy about being supported by John's non-existent success. What about us? What about our marriage? I stood up, brushing dust off my jeans. Our marriage is over, Beth. You made that choice when you decided John was more exciting than the life we'd built together. But we're going to co-parent our daughters like civilized adults, and we're going to do it without destroying what's left of our family. And if I don't agree? Then you can figure out how to raise 2 teenagers on your own, with no money, no job, and no support system. Your choice. Beth was quiet for a moment. Then she nodded. Okay. Thank you. I walked up to the condo to get my daughters. They were sitting on the floor of an empty bedroom, surrounded by garbage bags full of their belongings. When they saw me, they both started crying. Dad! Bree threw herself into my arms. I want to go home. I hate it here. Beau, trying to maintain 15-year-old dignity, settled for a fierce hug. Mom said you didn't want us anymore. That's not true. I said, holding them both. "I've wanted you every single day. I've been fighting to get you back." "Are you and Mom getting divorced?" Bree asked. "Yes, sweetheart, we are. But that doesn't change how much I love you, or how much your mom loves you. We're going to figure out how to be a family in a different way." That night, I helped them move into the guest house behind Mom's place. It wasn't much, 2 small bedrooms, a kitchenette, and a living area, but it was clean and safe and surrounded by family. As I tucked Bree into bed in her new room, she looked up at me with serious eyes. "Dad, are you going to be okay?" "I'm going to be fine, sweetheart. Better than fine." "How do you know?" I thought about it for a moment. 3 weeks ago, I'd thought my life was over. My wife had left me, my brother had betrayed me, and I'd lost everything I thought mattered. But sitting in that small room, with my daughter safe in bed and my family slowly healing around me, I realized something important. I'd been so busy trying to be the perfect husband and provider that I'd forgotten who I was underneath all that responsibility. The man who'd built a business from nothing, who'd coached championship softball teams, who'd raised 2 incredible daughters and maintained a marriage for 17 years. That man was stronger than I'd given him credit for. John and Beth had taken a lot from me, but they hadn't taken everything, and what they'd left behind was turning out to be more than enough. "I know," I told my daughter, "because I'm not the same person I was 3 weeks ago, and that's not necessarily a bad thing." 3 months later, I was a different man, living a different life. The divorce was finalized. Beth got the house but had to sell it to pay legal fees. I kept the business and my retirement accounts, and we shared custody of the girls 50-50. It wasn't the ending anyone had planned, but it was honest, which was more than I could say for the marriage. I'd moved into a 2-bedroom apartment closer to the girls' schools, nothing fancy but clean and comfortable. The walls were covered with their artwork and photos from softball games and school plays. It felt more like home than the house ever had. Beth was working as a receptionist at a dental office, living in a small apartment across town. The adjustment had been hard for her. She'd gone from suburban princess to single working mother overnight, but she was managing. We were civil to each other at school events and custody exchanges, which was about as good as anyone could expect. John had disappeared entirely. Rumors placed him in Florida or Texas, or somewhere else where failed contractors could start over with new names and clean slates. He'd left behind a trail of debt and broken promises, but at least he was no longer my problem. The business was thriving. With John gone and his unauthorized spending stopped, we were more profitable than we'd been in years. Connie had stepped up as operations manager, Mom was enjoying her role as elder stateswoman, and Carl had been promoted to full partner. It turned out that removing the dead weight had been exactly what we needed. But the real victory was my relationship with my daughters. Without the tension of a failing marriage, I was a better father, more present, more engaged, less distracted by trying to fix things that couldn't be fixed. Beau and Bree were thriving, their grades had improved, they were back to their old activities, and they seemed genuinely happy in our new normal. I was thinking about all of this on a Friday evening in March, sitting on my apartment balcony with a beer and watching the sunset, when my phone rang. The number was blocked, but something made me answer. "James, it's John." I nearly dropped the phone. "Where are you?" "That doesn't matter. I'm calling to apologize and to warn you." "Warn me about what?" "Beth. She's been calling me, trying to get me to come back, saying she made a mistake. She thinks if we get back together, she can convince you to take her back too. Some kind of twisted reconciliation fantasy." I laughed, and it came out harsher than I intended. "John, I wouldn't take Beth back if she came with $1 million dowry and a written guarantee of fidelity. That ship has sailed, sunk, and been salvaged for scrap metal." I figured. "But she's desperate, James. Desperate people do stupid things." "Speaking from experience?" A long pause. "Yeah, speaking from experience." After John hung up, I sat on the balcony thinking about desperation and the stupid things it makes people do. I'd been desperate once, 3 months ago, sitting in an empty house with divorce papers in my hand. But instead of doing something stupid, I'd done something smart. I'd fought back. The warning turned out to be prophetic. Saturday afternoon, I was at Mom's house for our weekly family dinner when Beth showed up uninvited. She was dressed up, the kind of outfit she used to wear for special occasions, and carrying a bottle of wine. "I hope I'm not interrupting," she said, though clearly she was. "I brought wine." The girls looked uncomfortable. Mom looked annoyed. Connie looked like she was trying not to laugh. "Beth," I said carefully, "what are you doing here?" "I wanted to talk to all of you, about us, about the family. I know I made mistakes, but I was hoping we could find a way to move forward together." "We have moved forward," Mom said, "just not in the direction you're thinking." Beth sat down uninvited, opening the wine with the kind of forced cheerfulness that made everyone uncomfortable. "I've been thinking about what we had, James, what we built together. Maybe we were too hasty, throwing it all away over one mistake." "One mistake?" Bew looked incredulous. "Mom, you had an affair. You moved us out of our house. You made Dad cry." "You made Dad cry?" Bree added, looking outraged. "It wasn't that simple," Beth said, but her voice was shaking. "There were problems in our marriage, issues we never addressed. I was lonely, and John was there, and I made a bad decision. But that doesn't mean we can't fix this." I looked at this woman who'd shared my life for 17 years, sitting at my mother's table, trying to rewrite history to suit her current needs. She was still beautiful, still charming when she wanted to be, still capable of making people believe her version of events. But I wasn't the same man who'd fallen for that charm 20 years ago. "Beth," I said gently, "I need you to listen to me very carefully. We are not getting back together, not now, not ever. What we had is gone, destroyed by choices you made. I've moved on, the girls have adjusted, and we're all happier now." "But the girls need a stable home, 2 parents. "The girls have a stable home," Connie interrupted. "They have 2 parents who love them and put their needs first. What they don't need is more chaos and drama." Beth's composure finally cracked. "This isn't fair. I made one mistake, and you're all acting like I'm some kind of monster. John seduced me, took advantage of my loneliness, and then abandoned me when things got difficult. I'm the victim here." The room went very quiet. Even the girls stopped eating, watching this adult meltdown with the fascination of people observing a car accident. "Beth," I said, standing up, "I think you should leave." "No!" She stood up too, wine sloshing from her glass. "I'm not leaving. This is my family too, and I'm not going to let you erase me like I never existed." "Nobody's erasing you," Mom said firmly. "You're the girl's mother, and that will never change. But you're not James's wife anymore, and you're not welcome to disrupt our family dinners with your drama." "Our family dinners? This is my family too." "No," I said, and my voice was steady and calm and final. "This is my family. You chose a different family when you chose John. You don't get to come back when that doesn't work out." Beth looked around the table, at Mom's stern disapproval, Connie's barely contained annoyance, the girls' uncomfortable expressions, my complete indifference to her distress. The reality of her situation finally seemed to hit her. "Fine," she said, grabbing her purse. "But this isn't over, James. The girls are my daughters too, and I won't let you turn them against me." "I don't need to turn them against you," I said. "You're doing that all by yourself." After she left, we finished dinner in relative quiet. The girls helped with dishes, and we played a board game like we did every Saturday. Normal family time, unmarked by drama or crisis. Later, as I was getting ready to leave, Mom pulled me aside. "You handled that well," she said. "Did I? I feel like I was kind of harsh." "James, that woman destroyed your marriage, kidnapped your children, and nearly bankrupted the family business. A little harshness is appropriate. I hugged my mother, this 73-year-old woman who'd held our family together through decades of ups and downs. Thanks, Mom, for everything. That's what family does. We take care of each other. Driving home, I thought about family and loyalty and the difference between the two. John had been family, but he'd never been loyal. Beth had been my wife, but she'd never really been my partner. The people sitting around Mom's dinner table, Mom, Connie, Carl, my daughters, they were both family and loyal. That was worth more than any marriage built on convenience and habit. The final confrontation came a month later at Bree's softball game. I was in the stands with the other parents, cheering as Bree pitched a no-hitter against our biggest rivals, when I saw Beth approaching with a man I didn't recognize. He was younger than her, dressed in a suit that was trying too hard, with the kind of smile that belonged on a used car lot. "James," Beth said, sitting down beside me, "I'd like you to meet Derek. Derek, this is my ex-husband." Derek extended his hand with aggressive friendliness. "Great to meet you, James. Beth's told me so much about you." I shook his hand, wondering what game Beth was playing now. "Nice to meet you, too. Derek's in real estate," Beth said, as if this explained everything. "He's been helping me look for a bigger place, somewhere the girls would be more comfortable." "The girls are comfortable where they are. But they could be more comfortable," Derek said, launching into what was clearly a prepared speech. "Beth's shown me the custody arrangement, and frankly, I think the girls would benefit from more stability. A traditional home environment, with 2 parents and consistent rules." I looked at Beth, who was watching me with the expression of someone who thought she was being very clever. "Let me understand this," I said. "You want to move the girls in with a man they've never met, in the name of providing stability?" "Derek and I have been dating for 2 months," Beth said defensively. "The girls will adjust." 2 months. I nodded thoughtfully. "How long did you date John before you decided he was the love of your life?" Beth's face flushed. "This is different." "Is it? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're doing the same thing you always do, looking for someone else to solve your problems." Derek, clearly uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation, tried to intervene. "Look, James, I know this is awkward, but I really care about Beth and the girls. I want what's best for everyone." "What's best for everyone," I said, standing up as Bree struck out the final batter, "is for the girls to stay where they are, with parents who put their needs first, instead of using them as pawns in some twisted game." The crowd was cheering as our team celebrated their victory. Bree was grinning on the pitcher's mound, looking for me in the stands. I waved at her, and she waved back, her face bright with joy and accomplishment. "Look at her," I said to Beth. "Look how happy she is. Look how well she's doing. Why would you want to disrupt that?" "Because I'm her mother," Beth said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Yes, you are. And if you really love her, you'll stop trying to use her to fix your own problems." I walked down to the field to congratulate my daughter, leaving Beth and Derek in the stands. As I hugged Bree, still sweaty and triumphant from her victory, I realized that this was what happiness looked like. Not the perfect suburban fantasy I'd tried to maintain with Beth, but this messy, complicated, real version of family. "Dad," Bree said, "did you see that last strikeout? Right down the middle." "I saw it, sweetheart. You were amazing. Are you proud of me?" I looked at this incredible young woman, my daughter, who was growing up strong and confident despite everything that had happened to our family. Prouder than you could possibly imagine. That night, after I'd taken the girls out for celebratory ice cream and dropped them back at Beth's apartment, I sat on my balcony with a beer and reflected on the strange journey that had brought me here. 6 months ago, I'd thought my life was over. My wife had left me for my brother, I'd lost my home and my sense of identity, and I'd felt like a complete failure as a husband and father. But sitting there in the spring evening, listening to the sounds of the city and thinking about my daughter's laughter over ice cream, I realized that sometimes losing everything you think you want is the first step toward finding what you actually need. I wasn't the same man Beth had left. I was stronger, more confident, more aware of my own worth. I'd learned to fight for what mattered and let go of what didn't. I'd discovered that being predictable wasn't a character flaw. It was a foundation that people could build their lives on. My phone buzzed with a text from Beau. "Thanks for coming to the game tonight, Dad. Love you." I smiled and typed back, "Wouldn't miss it. Love you too." Beth had been right about one thing. I had been predictable. I'd been the kind of man who showed up when he said he would, who kept his promises, who put his family's needs ahead of his own wants. I'd been steady, reliable, boring. And as it turned out, that wasn't such a bad thing to be. The marriage was over, but the family, the real family, built on loyalty and love instead of convenience and habit, was stronger than ever. Beth could keep looking for excitement and passion and whatever else she thought she was missing. I'd found something better, peace. And that, I thought, taking another sip of beer and watching the stars come out over my new life, was more than enough. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. Write in the comments from which city you are watching,